Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. And I thought I'd do something a little bit different today. Recently, I looked at the 10 reasons that I collect Transformers, and I've kind of asked everybody their reasons, and the response has actually been pretty fantastic. Enough that I thought, you know what? Why don't we give this another go? Why don't we look at something else that I'm sure everybody can have an opinion on? So I thought this time I would do a GotBot countdown of what I believe are the 10 most influential series in the Transformers franchise. I know, that's a big order. Stick around, we're going to talk about what they are, or at least what I think they are, and why I think they are as influential, you know, as I believe them to be, in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Stick around. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot, and as always, I'm going to ask you to check out Machinery Man and the Everything Factor, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, especially for something like this, let me know what you think. Let's get something out of the way right away. This certainly isn't the definitive list of all, you know, fiction and series. And it certainly probably isn't, you know, the ultimate list of it. But it is my list of it, and who knows, maybe it will be your list as well. So let's jump right into it. With number 10, this is one that's not actually originally part of the Transformers lore. It was retconned to become part of it. Number 10, and I don't have anything to represent number 10, as you can see, is the GotBots. I love these guys. You had the Guardians led by Leader 1, you had the Renegades led by the evil Psykill. I loved his name, it was so cool. This series, you know, had the planet Gobatron, and they went to Earth, and, you know, these two forces ended up combating one another, and it was good for what it was. It had some campy dialogue and voice acting. It certainly had a gentler cartoon type of feel to it. It, however, was the one that started in 1983, and it's what everything else sort of followed from, even though that franchise, you know, as it was, did not last and certainly got blown out of the water by Transformers. Still, you can't overlook something that started out as a alternate, as a competition, only years later to become absorbed into the grander scheme of things as, you know, an alternate, I guess, an alternate universe, so to speak. So I would say that number 10 is the GotBots. Number 9, and I don't have anything here for number 9. Why? Because number 9 is the G2 era, with its harsh computer animated Optimus Prime and that kid that he always talked to and basically recounted the adventures from G1 and those gaudy, terrible colors. G2 probably not a shining star, but it was influential because a lot of people that had been a little bit too young when the whole series first started had a chance to be reintroduced to it, and there are people today who look back on that era as, you know, when they were hitting their golden age for coming into it, and see those colors and think, that's what I remember as a kid, and that's why it's still influential, because of the age that it has, and of course the now influence that it's been able to give because of it hitting on a demographic right at the right time. Number 8. Number 8 is a series that I'm not particularly fond of. It is, however influential, and it is the Unicron trilogy. Now I could say Armada, I could say Cybertron, I could say Energon. I'm putting them all together here. They all are considered the Unicron trilogy, and here's why they're important. One, it gave us, I guess, alternate familiar models for characters like Megatron that have endured. I mean, just a little while ago we had an Armada Megatron, we've had that fantastic Armada Starscream, but in terms of lore, we got introduced to characters that have now become part of, I guess, not only the established fandom, but part of the lore and totally enshrined, like Vector Prime, and of course Primus himself. Being, you know, really established as the planet Cybertron and how he could transform. This is what we think of when we think of Cybertron and Primus, especially in toy form, and it came from the Unicron trilogy. So you really can't discount it, whether you're an enormous fan of it or not. Number 7. Number 7 is a strange one. Number 7 is one where this guy is evil, and one where this guy is not only a good guy, but loyal. I'm talking, of course, about Shattered Glass. It is I guess, a stream of, a stream of fiction within the Transformers universe that has gotten very little attention, but built an absolutely rabid fan base, to the point where, you know, as of this recording, we recently got news that there's going to be a Shattered Glass Masterpiece Optimus Prime with his purple and black motif, and, you know, his vicious demeanor. You know what, when you have had enough of an influence that you score a Masterpiece toy, you've had a big influence. Number 6. Number 6, what can I say for number 6? For number 6, I'm going to grab actually this guy, because he's kind of gotten a bit of a role in number 6. Number 6 is the current comics universe. IDW has done a great job of, you know, building and revisioning G1 and including, you know, so many different characters. Now, some people love it. Some people don't. I followed some of the stories. I kind of like the artwork. I find it interesting how certain characters get brought in. Sometimes I like the writing. Sometimes I find it kind of stilted. But there are, again, people out there who will say, and rightfully so, that, you know what, their vision of G1, friends of mine, their version of G1, all that they really associate with G1 is the current comics iteration. And you know what? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because it pulls in a lot of new fans and they have some great series. I love that they have largely given the fan-made character of Windblade a personality, and really sort of established who and what she was as our first kind of fiction related to that character. And you can't underestimate that, because she's actually grown, despite the flaws of the toy, which I'll look at another time, she's actually grown to be a pretty good fan favorite among many people. Then we come to number 5. Number 5, a lot of people don't like this one. I do, but a lot of people don't. And of course I'm talking about, I'll move this guy back, the film franchise. Okay, sure, there have been some writing problems. Sure, there have been some characters represented in ways that just don't make sense. I'm looking at you, Devastator. And we've had some just really sort of outlandish characters. I'm looking at you, Fallen. But there are people, again, who have either had their passion rekindled by the movie franchise, or look at it and say, I didn't really dig it as a kid, but you know what? The movies are pretty cool, and they're just plain fun. Yeah, sure, there's continuity issues, if you dig deep enough. No doubt about it. But if you want a fun time at the movies, this whole film series is just a great time to have. And I think for a lot of us, it's just rewarding to finally see these huge big bots on the big screen, and an idea of what they might look like if they were here in real life. Do you dig the aesthetics? That varies. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Some of them I thought have been absolutely fantastic takes on certain characters. Some of them I feel like could have been someone else. I am looking at you, Hound. I'm sorry. That whole character should have been Bulkhead. Just saying. Or at least in my opinion, it should have been. Number four. Number four, I think, is probably the most underestimated of the, I guess, you know, series within the Transformers larger universe, and that would be Transformers Animated. Transformers Animated was brilliant. It had a notion of the Allspark. It made the Decepticons appearance something to be feared and a big deal again. It brought compelling characters, great relationships between those characters. Even the voice acting, especially for Megatron, was spine-shivering. It was fearful, it was cold and callous, and it was absolutely beautiful and brilliant. It turned the whole idea on its ear by, you know, having a Magnus be a step higher, and Ultra Magnus was, you know, your kind of typical busy hero that almost couldn't be bothered with the smaller underlings because he has so many responsibilities on his plate. But at the same time, he never really turned anyone away when push came to shove. And it was a chance to see, you know, a version of Optimus Prime that grows into a leader. It was a great series that probably didn't last long enough. I would have loved to have seen where it would have ended. And again, the aesthetics, a bit strange. The toys were largely great, but the storytelling was absolutely top-notch. Then we get to number three. Number three, one that is a favorite of many fans. And I'm talking about the Beast Wars. Now, I'll say this, I feel like the first couple of seasons of Beast Wars were especially the height and apex for this series. It started out not apparently being connected to G1. They'd done some fantastic stories later on that showed that this was actually happening, you know, through a time portal in the past, and you had a real sense of dread of what Megatron and his Predacons would do to basically make sure that in the future the Decepticons won. Again, it turned out to be brilliant storytelling. Now, that being said, I feel like sometimes the complexity of the stories might have been over some kids' heads, but for those that it wasn't over, and for fans like me who were older but not quite into adulthood at the time, it was an excellent, excellent way to kind of keep our interest, you know, growing without kind of talking down to the fans. I think it came at the right time. I really do think that it came at the right time. Now, you had also Beast Wars 2. That was done with more traditional animation. You had Beast Wars Neo, and okay, I'll give credit where credit is due. It gave us things like Lio Convoy. Stampy never should have been a character. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the character Stampy. That thing is just terrible. And I guess you could include Beast Machines, which was, I always found very esoteric and sort of philosophical and out there. But you know what Beast Wars did do? It established the idea of sparks. It established the idea of being able to do rescans, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe it established the notion of Cybertron having like a biological history to it, if I'm not mistaken. These are all things that have lasted right down to present day, especially the notion of sparks. And you can't underestimate how influential that has been on the entire universe as a whole. Number two. Number 2 is actually one of my favorites, and one of the favorites of a lot of people, and it is one that actually kind of brought us a true blue third faction. Who am I talking about? What am I talking about? Transformers Prime brought us the Predacons. And this is Predacon member Skylinks, as seen in the Predacons Rising film that ended that series. Now, again, I guess here we should really include the current RID series, since it is a continuation of Transformers Prime. And of course you can bring in the games of War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, both fantastic games. I mean, it gave us a mold like this Skywarp Seeker, and that thing is absolutely fantastic and fun. But I'm going to focus on, as great as the games were, pardon me, and they really did sort of inspire a toy line for a while through that 2012 kind of, 2010, 2011, 2012 era. The core of that entire continuity would have to be Transformers Prime. And it was brilliantly written. It was dark. It was grown up. But at the same time, it had its moments of being fun and jovial. It was serious. It was foreboding. And again, Megatron and the Decepticons were a real threat, especially Megatron. But most importantly, this gave us a third faction. It gave us a history of the true Predacons and that entire sort of evolution. It gave us a revisioned idea of Predaking, not as a combiner, which a lot of people didn't like, but I don't think he was supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a version of that character. It is, a completely different incarnation and idea for what Predaking could be. And he had his followers. And honestly, I don't think that they were given enough attention even in the show. But at the end of the day, I really think that they could have lived, and maybe they will sometime down the road, but they certainly could live to be a formidable third faction, which would totally throw off the dynamic of good and bad, because all of a sudden the lines can't just clearly be drawn. And that brings us to our number one. Our number one, I guess, series, our number one continuity would have to, of course, be good old-fashioned G1 love. I'm not even sure how well that's all coming on there. If I can bring this back a bit. There you go. G1 love with, represented by Blur and Ultra Magnus here. And you know what? The fact of the matter is, the original series that started, so long ago has been the basis for everything else. It introduced us to the characters, to the factions, to their insignias. It introduced us to Cybertron and Vector Sigma. It introduced us to the idea of the Quintessons and Combiners. It was absolutely brilliant. Now, some people might say, hey, what part of G1 are you talking about? I think everybody throughout the world really knows we'll say, initial parts of G1. But to a lesser degree, you can throw in the Headmasters. Granted, in North America and a lot of the English-speaking world, our only fiction for that was the Rebirth trilogy, season 4. But the Headmasters was a great series in and of itself, and totally fleshed out many of the characters and gave us things again that have been enduring, like Black Zarak, gave us things like the Master Sword. Then you have Super God Master Force, and Master Force gave us, again, a classic character like Ginrai. We get to Victory, and we've had an MP Starsaber. There's an upcoming Lio Kaiser coming, where the core, granted, is a little messed up. It's going to be Dazarus, who is basically Death Saurus. So it has a lasting legacy, and of course, even that one episode of Zone has given us the classic Diatlas, and perhaps the most peculiar Decepticon leader of all times in Violent Jiger. It cannot be discounted. It is the basis of absolutely everything else. Anyway, that being said, sure, there are a lot that you could debate on, and I did certainly leave some out. But let me know what you think. I believe those to be the top 10 most influential Transformers series that we've ever gotten. But I'd love to know what you guys think. So, by all means, you know, I always say like, comment, and subscribe. I really do kind of mean it this time. In the meantime, I guess that's it for another countdown list. I'm still kind of getting used to doing these and coming up with ideas for them. We'll see how it pans out in the future. As always, I thank you for dropping by and giving me some of your time. You know it's appreciated. And I certainly look forward to the next time that we have another visit right here inside the videos.